This is Barry McKnight, the voice of the Troy Trojans. You're tuned in to the Phillip Jordan Show podcast.
One, the Auburn Tigers defense played well on Saturday versus the Aggies. 2, the Auburn offense did not. 3, can they get it fixed before they play Georgia after an off week? Welcome into the Phillip Jordan Show podcast. I am Phillip Jordan, in-studio host and producer of West Football on 96.9 The Legend, and also covered Auburn Tigers over at Auburn Wire, part of USA Today. We're going to have a fun show playing for you guys today. Going to have Logan Fowler. He covers the Auburn Tigers over at 1819 News. He's also senior writer at the War Rapport, also covering all things Auburn there as well. And we will dive into Auburn's 16-10 loss to Texas A&M on Saturday. Auburn defense played great. The Auburn offense was nowhere to be seen. And we'll also look ahead to their matchup with Georgia and just overall take on what's going on with the Auburn Tigers football team. Before we do all that, before I give kind of some more of my thoughts on the game from Saturday, let you guys know you can find me and the podcast. You can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review, and I will read it on a future edition of the show. And if you leave just 4 stars, you're just a straight-up hater or probably an Alabama fan. You can also watch the show over on YouTube, Phillip Jordan Sports. Just hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for all notifications, and please leave a comment on a video. I'll read it on a future edition as well. You can always email me at sports.philipjordan@gmail.com. So before we get into it and bring Logan on to the show, just my kind of quick thoughts on the game on Saturday. What can you say? The offense was bad once again. And third time in a row with these Auburn coaches, you have an offensive guy, but you're struggling on that side of the ball. I mean, early on with Gus Malzahn, the offense was working, and then the defense got good under Kevin Steele, and the offense was not great. And then we all, Brian Harsin, we're not even going to touch on that, the worst coach in all football history. And now you bring Hugh Freeze, he's supposed to be great on offense. Now, early on, I think a lot of people were giving Hugh Freeze some grace, some leeway. He's got to rebuild the roster. The roster obviously was not where it needed to be to compete in the SEC, thanks to the lack of recruiting for Brian Harsin during his year and a half. And let's be honest, the last year or two under Gus, the recruiting wasn't great as well either. Defense played great. I mean, Xavier Atkins, this is a guy, the guy from the portal, 10 tackles, 1 sack, 2 TFLs in the game. And then also Woodyard, Eric Winters, and also Keon Crawford. They had sacks. The secondary played well. Now, look, A&M scored that touchdown first drive. After that, Auburn was bend but don't break, kind of like they were last year too as well, where, yeah, they gave up some yards, but they weren't giving up touchdowns. They were forcing field goals, long field goals at that. And the defense just kept Auburn in the game. As far as Xavier Atkins almost scored a touchdown, 72-yard interception there in the fourth quarter, and it set up a Jackson Arnold touchdown, gave Auburn every chance to stay in the game, but the Auburn offense could not do anything. And here's the things I can complain about. And you would think, oh, it's Jackson Arnold throwing the ball. It's the offensive line not playing well in pass protection. That's not where I'm going to start off. Not running the football. 8 runs by your 2 running backs. 2 from Damari Alston, 6 from Jeremiah Cobb. This was a team, yes, I know it was Baylor. They're not a great defense. I know it was Ball State. I know it was South Alabama. But Auburn was rushing for 700 yards combined those first 3 games. These last 2 weeks, they hadn't hit 200. And they're not, and it's not that they can't run the ball. They're just not doing it. I'm like, Hugh Freeze, what did the run game ever do to you? Run the football. That will help your passing game. And run it more Jackson Arnold. And especially if the defense thinks the running back is going to carry the football, then you can do some of those fakes with Jackson Arnold. You have to have more of a concerted effort to run the ball. There is no reason why Auburn should have lost that game on Saturday with the defense performance that they gave against A&M. Their defense played really good against Oklahoma as well. Just the offensive line gave up 5 sacks and the constant penalties. And that's another thing. That comes back on coaching. That's discipline. And that's got to be fixed. Now, Auburn's off this week, and then they will play at home at Georgia. Of course, that's tonight. They're going to honor Cam Newton and all that. And Jackson Arnold, look, I was kind of going into, okay, this guy's got talent. It was a bad situation. Oklahoma, the receivers were hurt. He's getting sacked all the time, which he's still doing now. But, man, you got to let go of the ball. You just got to let it loose. You've got Eric Singleton Jr. You've got Cam Coleman. If you see them guys in one-on-one coverage, throw it their direction, especially Cam Coleman. Good chances he is going to go get it. And, something else with the offense I've seen too. And it kind of, I'm getting flashbacks to Gus Malzahn. You're sending them all deep, trying to hit the home run. One, your offensive line cannot hold protection long enough for you to do that. Two, something over the middle. Be creative. Don't put Cam Coleman in one spot. Move him around. Make the defense guessing on where you're going to put him. And look, when you look at it with Hugh Freeze, he is 1-10 versus ranked opponents as the head coach at Auburn. 4-16 overall, losing record, and 5-13 in SEC play. And he keeps saying, going back to the run game, that he keeps talking about that's something they need to do. Well, do it. Run the ball, Hugh. Run the football. That will be an ingredient for success for your team. They're not going to be favored to beat Georgia. And you got Missouri coming up. They still got Vanderbilt on the schedule. I mean, it's not getting any easier for Auburn. They'll be back at home. That helps. But, I don't know. This offense is going to have to get good. Get average. The defense plays like they did against Oklahoma and A&M rest of the year. You do not have to have a great offense to win football games. You just need to be average. Be good. You don't have to be great. And you got to figure out a way to get Cam Coleman the ball. You got to get these receivers involved because, look, this goes away. If it keeps going this way, you got to wonder if Auburn's going to need to make a change. And also these receivers be saying, look, we're not getting the ball. Because this is a talented receiver. I think it's the best when it comes to pure talent that Auburn's had since 2004. That team won undefeated with Devin Richardson, Beno Romanu, Courtney Taylor, Anthony Mix in that group. But man, they have got to get them the ball. And we'll see what happens going forward. But they're off this week, and then next week is Georgia. It's not easier. I know they're home, but Georgia's going to be a team looking to get a victory after losing to Alabama, which they play Kentucky this week. So we'll see how that happens. All right, so that's my thoughts on the game. A little rant there to start off. Now let's jump into it with Logan Fowler from 1819 News and War Rapport. Get his thoughts on Auburn and what happened on Saturday against Texas A&M. All right, as I mentioned on the top, I am joined by Logan Fowler. You can check him out covering all things Auburn for 1819 News and also senior writer for the War Rapport. And Logan, I appreciate you coming on. I wish we had a win to talk about for the Auburn Tigers, but I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on. It was definitely a little bit of a disastrous weekend for Auburn and for Auburn fans who were tuned into that Texas A&M game, but lots of good content to talk about, I guess. Well, not good content, but lots of content to talk about.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I know. I do hate it when Auburn's off. I was telling our lead writer and editor and all that stuff at the Auburn Wire, Taylor, I was like, Freeze doesn't do a press conference during the off week. I said, doesn't he know we need content to this week? But there's plenty of it after that. I don't know about you, but when I looked at before the season started, I looked at that back-to-back road games at Oklahoma, at Texas A&M. I said, they just need to split. If you win against Baylor, because Baylor feels like forever ago now, because there was so much positivity after the Baylor win that was going to give Auburn some momentum going into the year. They're 3-0 going into these games. Okay, Oklahoma, Jackson Arnold going back to Oklahoma. Maybe there's going to be some emotion there. And then obviously A&M. If you could split those two, go into your off week, I think you'd be in a good spot. But losing to two, now Auburn looks at 3-2 off week, and then Georgia coming in. So completely, it's obviously not good right now for Auburn.
No, look, I mean, you can't write them off completely after the two losses, but I agree with you. I think that anybody who kind of objectively looked at the schedule in the preseason thought that, okay, this 3-game stretch beginning with Oklahoma, ending with Georgia, you've got to find a way to win one of these games, to kind of keep your hopes of making, a potential playoff run intact. So obviously they didn't get the job done in week 1 I guess technically week 4 versus Oklahoma. Thought they had a little bit of a better shot this past weekend against Texas A&M. after that Oklahoma game, it was like, okay, it was also a dreadful performance in some areas. There were lots of missed opportunities, lots of penalties. Um, Obviously, you had it was a controversial loss with some of the penalties that just didn't go your way. You caught some tough breaks, but you still had ample opportunity to win that game. So it kind of left me thinking, okay, well, we saw this Auburn team match up with, another top 15 team on the road in a hostile environment in Norman. Um, they can definitely go out on the road against this Texas A&M squad and get a win. Still a win, first time since uh, 2019 beating a ranked opponent on the road. So I thought that Auburn kind of matched up with this A&M team pretty well, and obviously we're going to get into the nitty gritty of that game. I thought that Auburn had a really good shot to kind of exploit Texas A&M's weakness on defense, and then obviously they never even really committed to the run. But yeah, no, look, that just makes this Georgia game all the more important. You get a week off to kind of evaluate. Hugh Freeze said he was going to reevaluate everything with the offense, which is badly needed after an atrocious last 2 weeks on that side of the ball. So really, Texas A&M was just even worse than Oklahoma. But yeah, I mean, look, that reevaluation is needed, and you kind of you need to show improvement in this Georgia game for sure.
Yeah, I was the same with you. I felt like coming out of Oklahoma, I still felt kind of really good about Auburn. I said, look, they made some mistakes on if they could clean up any of the penalties, and the sacks, the offense line just a little bit. And then, look, there were some calls winning against Auburn's way. You don't expect that to happen every week. You play close to the same you did against Oklahoma. Used to beat A&M because I looked at A&M too. They were giving up 139 yards on the ground. They were given 211 through the air. I mean, that was not just Notre Dame. That was the previous two opponents they played to as well. So there were some holes in that defense, but obviously it didn't work out that way. But I told you all fair, I said, we're going to try to say, at least start positive, the defense. That defense did everything humanly possible, except, I guess, score a touchdown, which Xavier Atkins almost did, to give Auburn the win there. They gave the offense plenty of opportunities to take the lead at the end of the game. Offense couldn't do it, but Logan, that defense was great, and this is the best this defense has been in years, and it makes it kind of hard on now with the offense struggling like they are, because average offense they would be 5-0 right now. But just, I mean, the way this defense has played so far, especially on Saturday.
Yeah, look, I even I talked about this on social media. Some I actually just got done writing a story about Xavier Atkins. Auburn's defense is allowing 16.4 points per game, which is in the top 20 nationally. I think it's 18th nationally. Which is the best mark since the 2021 season, which, like you said, makes this kind of offensive, fiasco all the more frustrating. It kind of feels like Auburn, really, the last few years has just been really good on defense and has been less than stellar on offense. After the Texas A&M game, that kind of seems to be the case again. Look, here's the thing with Auburn's defense is, like you said, they've kept Auburn in every single game. They've given them a chance to win every single game. You look at the Baylor. Look, Auburn's opponents have scored on every single opening drive except for Ball State. They punted. Now, whether it be a field goal or a touchdown, each of Auburn's opponents have scored on the first drive. But then again, you look at the scoreboard in the fourth quarter against the Texas A&M game, and they only have 16 points. It was kind of another bend, don't break mentality again on Saturday. But, what works. A bright spot for this defense was obviously Xavier Atkins. His 73-yard interception return was Auburn's longest since 2020 was Smoke Monday. And it obviously set up Auburn's, lone touchdown of the day. He finished his night with a career high 10 tackles. Pass defense is looking a lot better after a shaky first couple weeks. Obviously, you get torched for 419 yards through the air in week 1 against Baylor. Even Ball State and South Alabama kind of had their way with that Auburn secondary, but you get Jay Crawford back this past weekend. He looks really good. Kayan Lee's looked good. After a few shaky starts against, the first 3 opponents, Caleb Harris has kind of come on. And, look, this Auburn defense has played great. They continue to give you an opportunity to win the game. And again, like I said, it just the offense has got to do something to kind of step up and alleviate some pressure off of those guys.
Yeah, out of the Baylor game, I came out concerned. I was like, oh, ooh, the secondary, maybe they need to be worried. But then again, you kind of look what Baylor's been doing against everybody. Sorry, Robertson's been dropping 300 yards pretty much on everybody they played. And what's funny when you look at what Auburn's defense, in a way, you rarely hear Keldrick Faulk's name mentioned when you're watching him on TV. I mean, obviously there's an impact with him because people are going to focus on him. That does open the door for other players to make big plays, but you're not hearing his name. Like Eric Winters on Saturday, he's not too far from where I'm from. I'm from Dothan. So Enterprise, freshman coming in, make a big play in the backfield. You obviously had Keon Crawford, he's been great this year. Woodyard's been great. I mean, so many other guys. Yeah, him as well. I mean, so many guys making plays, their pass rush. And again, you said the secondary and the linebackers, a young group at linebacker. I mean, they're all just coming together really well.
Yeah. And you know, I think I've talked about this a little bit on a couple of our other shows that we do at the War Rapport. Like this Auburn secondary, you know, preseason, anyone who paid attention to this team throughout the offseason had to feel really good about this secondary. Like I said, you got K and Lee, Jay Crawford, Caleb Harris. This guy was the, you know, leading returning tackler from a season ago. And again, like I said, they stepped up their play, but that was obviously the biggest question mark throughout the first couple of weeks. And on the flip side, the biggest question mark for me in preseason was who in the world other than Keldrick Faulk is going to step up in that front seven. Obviously, you lose, you know, the trio of Eugene Asante, Austin Keys, Mausi from that linebacker room. And now you're kind of left with a young, inexperienced group. DeMarcus Riddick was kind of the, you know, leader of that unit heading out of the preseason. And then again, in the middle of that defensive line, who's going to step up? You know, you bring in a slew of transfers, and obviously you've got a lot of young talent like Jordan Crawford and Malik Autry and guys like that. But yeah, it's been a complete, you know, flip of the script for me throughout 5 games this year. Auburn's front seven has been really impressive. Like you said, Keyron Crawford's been great. Jared Smith flies around like his freaking tail's on fire every play. I mean, you got to love that. And then obviously some young guys in the back end of that secondary have been pretty good as well. But yeah, no, I mean, look, there's a lot of positives for DJ Durkin and this Auburn unit to build on, and they've certainly got to keep this going throughout the rest of the season if you know, Auburn wants to continue to see success.
Yeah, I mean, and now we jump over to offense. And Jesse Palmer said it during the broadcast. Auburn could have left the offense at the hotel, and they still would have scored. Still come out the same. You know, over 13 on third down. Was that 3 of 28 in SEC play so far? So they've not been good on third down. Offensive line issues were still there on Saturday. Gave up 5 sacks. And I'm with you. You mentioned this at the top of this conversation, the run game. You can't even say they haven't been able to run the ball because they haven't even really tried. 8 runs in this game, 2 for Austin, 6 for Jeremiah Cobb. And I know last week, coming out of the Oklahoma game, Hugh Freeze talked about, you know, I'm not quoting him word for word, but basically need to, you know, go with the run game a little bit more. And he gets asked about it again on Saturday. He mentioned it again. I'm like, okay, you keep telling us you want to run the ball more, but you're not doing it. And I just feel like with the offensive line issues and with Jackson Arnold and running with him too as well, if they could just commit to that run game, that could open up some other things for them from the play action and stuff like that. But I don't know. Does Hugh Freeze just hate to run the ball? It's kind of what I'm kind of wondering.
Yeah, I mean, look, he even said it, you know, before the Oklahoma game that this Auburn offense has got to get some dirty yards on first down, especially. You bring up third downs. Auburn's got an average distance to go through its 2 SEC games of 11 yards. Mm-hmm. So that obviously comes as a result of dropping back nearly 80% of the time on first down. And obviously you can bring in offensive line protection issues. Jackson Arnold hold on to the ball too much, but all of this goes away if you just commit to the same plan that you did the first 3 weeks and run the football. This team ran for 700 plus yards in the first 3 weeks, and I get it. They played pretty bad defenses. Baylor's got probably one of the worst defenses in all of college football. Ball State is probably the worst team in all of college football. So, you know, you did what you had to do. But the thing that impressed me the most in those first 3 games was Hugh Freeze as a play caller. He was taking what the defense was giving him. He was playing the Jackson Arnold strengths. He knew dating back to the preseason that this offensive line kind of struggled in pass protection issues. So, hey, let's run the ball. Let's play to our strengths and take what the defense has given us. Did a great job against that with that against Baylor with the too high safety look all week. Ball State played their cornerbacks 15 yards off the ball. So he did a great job. So, obviously that Oklahoma defense was pretty feisty. There was still some creativity in that game plan and that scheme. Obviously, you don't want to see Jackson Arnold drop back 48 times. And he got sacked for, 9. He got sacked 9 times against Oklahoma. But this Texas A&M week, that looked it looked very vanilla. There was no creativity within this offense. And again, like you said, 8 carries for your 2 running backs. One of them it was second in the SEC in rushing yards, and Jeremiah Cobb. I mean, this guy had 2 straight 100-yard games a couple weeks ago, and they've combined for 21 carries for 124 yards the past 2 games. It makes no sense. I get it. Hugh Freeze's offensive scheme is an RPO scheme, run, pass, option. So Jackson Arnold has the option to pass the ball. However, that needs to be coached that on, hey, look, I get if you've got this box on a 3rd and short, let's go with a pass option. But again, you can't go 3rd and 3 with the pass protection issues that you've got, with Jackson Arnold holding onto the ball and opt to throw the ball against a defense like Texas A&M, who is very susceptible to giving up big plays on the ground. They allowed UTSA to go for 200 plus in week 1. They allowed Notre Dame and Jeremiah Love went 100 plus on them in that week 2 matchup. And again, you've got the unit, you've got the guys to run the ball, and it just didn't happen. So like you said, look, you can't even say that Auburn abandoned the run because they never committed to the run. And that facet of the game is something that, like I said, in that reevaluation period that he was going to do throughout this week, that's something that needs to be number one on his mind is, hey, how can we get these running backs more involved going forward?
Yeah, and it's kind of the same deal. I mean, Cam Coleman, we saw the defense A&M was playing because Auburn pretty much, you say vanilla. They put him in the same spot pretty much every play, and then A&M knew how to defend it. I think they just need to move him around a little bit more, be more creative with where you're putting him. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but sometimes I'm watching him play. I feel like I'm watching Gus's offense when he was at Auburn, where it's like, okay, let's just send the receivers downfield, but there's not a lot of over the middle short game for Jackson Arnold to go to. Look, I agree with you. He does hold on to the ball too long sometimes. I'm like, are you just worried you're gonna make a mistake, or what is it there? I mean, if you figure if you got Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton, they've got one-on-one coverage. Just throw it in their direction. They will make a play. But I don't know. What are you seeing when you seeing Auburn play? Just kind of like the way they're using Cam Coleman and these receivers.
Yeah, you've got to find more creative ways to get Cam Coleman involved. Obviously, we saw what he did against Oklahoma. Wasn't really there against A&M. Let's see, he had 4 catches and 18 yards on 8 targets. Mm-hmm. So, there wasn't very many creative ways getting him the ball. Now, look, I would advise everyone to go and watch Aaron Murray's, QB film breakdown of Jackson Arnold this past weekend against Texas A&M. I haven't completed the whole video, but he shows it. I mean, like, there are receivers open on these plays. Now, again, it's not necessarily the most creative, route tree out there, but they're open. And Jackson Arnold's just got to get rid of the ball. It's kind of the same thing we were seeing the past couple of years with Peyton Thorne, a little hesitant to throw the ball. And well, Peyton Thorne threw a lot of interceptions, and he wasn't quite as hesitant as Jackson Arnold has been, but
yeah,
he just didn't hit his receivers in open windows like he should have. And that's kind of the same thing we saw against Texas A&M this past weekend, is Jackson Arnold holding on to the ball too much. Again, obviously, a plus you can take away from all of this is Auburn is, Jackson Arnold's not thrown a single interception all year, and that's certainly a positive to build on, but he's got nearly 3 seconds, according to PFF, to throw the ball. So you can't necessarily put all of the offensive woes on the offensive line. It is a mix of things. But yeah, no, I mean, you asked me about Cam Coleman. He's the best player on the field at all times. There's no other way around it. Him and Eric Singleton Jr. have elite speed, elite, yard after the catch ability. You just got to find ways to get him the ball, and obviously teams are going to focus in on him, which should allow you to hit the Auburn's slew of receivers who are extremely talented. But no, you've got to find more ways to get the ball in your playmakers' hands, however that be.
And, I left the final drive of the game on offense. I left, scratching my head because look, I know it was a minute. They had a long ways to go to tie, the score there at the end. But I'll say this: the 4th and 1 that ended the game. Run the ball. Just get the. I'm kind of the mindset that run the ball, get the first down, get you a new set of downs because the way that play went. I mean, Jackson Arnold had no shot because A&M just got there. I mean, they sent more guys than Auburn could block. I just there's a couple times in the game you're kind of thinking like there was during the game a 3rd and long and they ran a run play with Eric Singleton. I'm like, why aren't you throwing it there? And then why aren't you running it on that 4th one just to get the first down and get a new set of downs? So it's there's a lot of head scratching things with it with the play calling too.
Yeah, look, I mean that kind of takes me back to the Oklahoma game when obviously Auburn wasn't really getting much push up front against the Oklahoma defensive front, but Jeremiah Cobb broke loose for a 44-yard run against Oklahoma, and then on the next 2 or 3 plays you opt to throw the ball instead of go back to the guy who got you down there in the red zone. Head scratcher. This weekend we saw Auburn opt to run a tight end screen to Brandon Frazier. That was head scratching. But no, look, this all goes back to, like I said, Auburn's averaging 11 yards to go on 3rd down. They were a dreadful 0 for 12, 0 for 13 on 3rd down against Texas A&M, and it's because you just are not opting to run the ball on 1st down. Auburn's running backs did not record a carry in this game that actually counted until the 2nd quarter. As a result, Auburn's first 3 drives, 3 of them were 3 and outs. Which is the 4th time this season that Auburn has opened up with a 3 and out on their first offensive drive. And again, you go back to it, and it all it all comes as a result of not running the ball on 1st down.
Georgia, looking ahead to that, I just want to ask you about this. When you look at that game, I think one thing that's going to help Auburn is they are going to be at home. Getting back to Jordan-Hare Stadium. Obviously, they'll have that crowd behind them. We saw it happen 2 years ago when Georgia came in and, Brock Bowers saved them there. The defense, we know, keep them in it too as well. And looking at it again, I mean, I know it's Alabama, but other teams, Tennessee, Georgia has started slow in some games. Their defense has not looked great. I'm not sitting here saying I'm picking Auburn to beat Georgia by no means, but maybe there's some things they can maybe figure out during this week off, and then they can implement against Georgia. Just what are your thoughts right now on that matchup?
Yeah, look, I mean, it does help that Auburn's going to be back at home this week. I think this is the first night game against Georgia since like 2012, so that's going to be a pretty good environment for Auburn fans to enjoy, and hopefully that coming back home will help Jackson Arnold feel a little bit more comfortable. Will help this offensive line with some communication issues. Hugh Freeze noted the other day at halftime against Texas A&M that Xavier Chaplin couldn't hear. Against dating back to the Oklahoma game, they had some pre-snap communication issues with the snap count and how they were signaling in. What the snap count was. So again, some of those noise factors won't be huge in this one. I think that that plays in Auburn's favor. But again, I think that, like you said, Auburn's got to get back on the ground against this Georgia defense. Georgia doesn't necessarily do a great job at getting pressure on the quarterback, at least not when blitzing. So like when they're rushing for, opposing quarterbacks have kind of had a pretty clean pocket and time to throw the ball. Maybe that can help with some of the offensive protection issues up front. Maybe that can help with Jackson Arnold kind of getting the ball out quicker, seeing his receivers progressing through his reads. But again, look, no, you need to see if you're going to beat this Georgia team, if you're going to be the top 15 team, or anyone remaining on your schedule, for a matter of fact, is you've got to clean up these penalties. Obviously Auburn is dead last in the nation with 21 sacks allowed. in the first 5 games, and they're 129th in penalties. So those two things on offense, you got to clean them up. And that's two of the biggest things for me is, penalties, sacks allowed, and kind of get this kind of get your gain in offensive footing or confidence on the ground in the early goings.
Yeah, because you really look back at the A&M game, that big run by Jackson Arnold had like a 30-yard run that put Auburn, on the other side of the field, but it got called back because of a penalty, and then set Auburn back. And obviously they've seen that third, super long is not something they're good at right now. So we'll see. We'll hopefully we'll get some more positive stuff to talk about with the Auburn Tigers here soon. Maybe a big upset win. That'd be great. I would rather have talk about a win and success on the pod than this, but it's where we're at right now. And Logan, I appreciate you coming on the show, breaking down Auburn, all things the A&M game, the defense. I'm glad we got to talk about the positives of the defense first, though. But as the listeners, viewers want to check out online, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find some of my written work with 1819 News and the warreport.com. And then you can go give me a follow on X or Twitter at Logan F. Fowler.
All right, go check out Logan. Check out his great work covering the Tigers. And Logan, appreciate the time and hope we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, man, appreciate it.
All right, everybody, and that's going to do it for this edition of the Phillip Jordan Show podcast. We'll be back later in the week. So Auburn is not playing this week. So you say, well, what you going to do? No interview with an opponent because Auburn don't have one this week. Well, we're going to dive into the SEC as a whole with Adam Spencer from Saturday Down South. That will be coming your way on Thursday. So hope you enjoyed that conversation with Logan. And we'll be back on Thursday with some Auburn talk, but also overall SEC talk. Anyway, till next time. Bye-bye.